Hi, this is Carrie from Scrapyard Chicks. Here, I'm going to adjust the camera. And I'm here to show you what our project is for the week. I'm sorry I'm a day late. I got a little carried away with my glitter and my fabulous trims and everything like that. I wanted to do a book in the shape of a witch's hat. And so I called it the Boo Crew. So you could put pictures in from a Halloween party, trick-or-treating. You could even just do your family and friends and stuff like that. It'd be really cute. And so the front and the back covers are chipboard and they're covered with paper, and then all the pages inside are just double-sided paper. And so I had so much fun at the craft store picking out all these fun embellishments, all this fun glittery trim, ribbon, all sorts of great stuff. If you are a subscriber, you stay tuned and you'll see all of the directions, and you'll get all the directions for doing all the detail for this. So I'm just going to flip through this. Each one of the pages is a witch's hat, and I put a photo mat on every page, either a 4x6, a 4x4, or a 3x4. I like to keep it nice and standard so you can put your real pictures on there, and just did a fun, different kind of embellishment on each one of the pages, whether I did some fussy cutting. There's all sorts of different things. Whoops, this needs some glue on it. Some really fun glittery rosettes. So you can see there's just all kinds of really fun stuff on this. Lots of glitter. I made these little bats from some punch outs and a piece of wire, some fun fringing, and then here's the back cover. And with the back cover, I had used black chipboard, so I actually just put paper on one side of it, and then there's the outside cover of the book with some of that really pretty ribbon. So this is a super fat book. That's why we use the big book ring. Also, I had a little trouble with the binding, as you'll see when you watch the video. So anyway, so this is our fun Boo Crew project. Stay tuned, and I'll go through the directions of how the whole thing is put together. Thanks again from Scrapyard Chicks. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to work with that pattern. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut out two of those halves of that pattern like this, and then go ahead and tape it together so that it creates one whole pattern. Now you might notice that on the directions it says to extend this down a 1/2 inch because you want this to be 11 inches high. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my pattern out of chipboard. I'm going to use this chipboard for my back and my front covers, so that's going to be really handy because once I cut it out, then I can use that as a pattern to cut the rest of my pieces. So what I've got right here is I've got a piece of chipboard that's 12 by 12. So I'm actually going to cut 1 inch off of it so that it's 11 inches because that's the height that I want my project to end up. Sorry, I'm off camera here for just a second while I do this. And this is actually really thick chipboard. It's some black that I have that's extra thick. So what happened is I tried to cut it with my trimmer, and it only kind of cuts through part of the way. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish it up with my scissors. You can cut it with a craft knife. If you have like an arm trimmer, a guillotine style, that usually works better for cutting chipboard anyway than your little paper trimmer. Otherwise you go through tons and tons of blades. Okay, so my chipboard now is 11 inches tall by, okay, so that's 11 inches high by 12 inches wide. So we've traced our pattern on there, and then we're just going to go and cut it out. So I cut out, you want to cut out two. You want to do one for the front and one for the back cover. Now, if you don't want to do two, you at the very minimum, you want to do one for your back cover so you have a nice foundation, but you could just cut the rest of your pieces out of cardstock if you want to. The nice thing is that now I can take this piece and I can trace it and cut it out of all of my pattern papers that I'm going to use for my pages. And the pages inside this book are actually all going to be just out of these fun double-sided pattern papers. I guess you could make all your pages out of chipboard if you wanted to make your book nice and chunky. I just kind of wanted a really fun witch's book. I didn't really necessarily need for it to be real thick. So and then what you're going to do is you're going to cover the front and the back of the front cover. I picked this really fun, sparkly, black swirly paper, which unfortunately has this cute spiders on the back, but I really wanted those black swirls on the front. Don't throw any of your scraps away because we're going to use them to embellish our book. So I'm going to use that for the outside of my front cover, and then I'm going to go ahead and pick something else to do inside of my front cover, and I'm going to cut out the rest of my pages. And I'll be back to show you what that looks like when that's all done. So I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, so I went ahead and I cut out all of my pages. I covered my front and the back side of my front cover. I covered just the inside of my back cover. You could cover both sides if you want. And then I did 5 pages for inside. Now, one thing when you're picking out your pattern papers, if you're not buying the kit of this, is that you want to look at the front, make sure the fronts, you have a variety of colors, but also look at the back sides, because you're going to see those when the pages flip over. So I wanted to make sure I didn't put 2 greens together, 2 oranges together, what have you. Then I went ahead and I inked up the edges of all my pages with a little bit of black distress ink, because I just love the look of that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and punch my holes. I did the front cover already. It's about 4 inches down from the top and about 4 inches up from the bottom and in a 1/2 inch. So all I need to do is punch one, and I can use that as my template. I'll go ahead and stack all of your pages up. You can punch them at the same time. And it's a good idea when you're doing a project like this, even though we're using a pattern, to use your actual cutout pieces as you're working through your pattern, because what happens is, everything's handmade and it's going to be slightly off. And as long as it's consistently slightly off, you're going to come out okay. Whereas if you're using your pattern and then you find out that, your pages are different, like the brim on your hat varies or something like that, it could just, look kind of funky. So anyway, so I went ahead and punched my pages. Then I'm going to use my last page to punch my back cover, and then I can go ahead and put some rings on this. I'm going to bind this with some 1-inch binding rings. You could also use ribbon. You could use pipe cleaners. You could use zip ties. You get creative. There's all kinds of funky stuff that you can use to bind a book together. And I chose to bind it up here on the hat portion because I like the idea of the pages kind of flipping over. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this together. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to start embellishing my book. And I'm going to do a different little technique on each one of the brims of these funky witch hats. And so that's going to be my only embellishment for this. And I found some great glittery ribbon, and I found some great little embellishments and stuff. I'm just going to go through and do that. Now, I used 2 book rings for this. You could use more. You could bind this with your cinch if you wanted to bind it all. But you could just kind of see how cool this is, when it opens up. Whoops. Maybe I need bigger rings. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to I'm going to finish putting my book together, and then I'll be back to show you what it looks like when it's all embellished. Okay, so I discovered that I have a little bit of a problem. If I bind my book here and here, like I was trying to do with my 1-inch rings, my problem is I've got this little lip right here. It makes it so that it won't open. That's the problem when you're making stuff on the fly and it's handmade. So what I did is I put a different hole up here that's about 2 inches down from the top, and I bound it with 1 larger ring. And so that way your pages can flip open like this. Now, if you want it to be bound a little tighter than that, you can do 2 rings. I'll show you what that looks like. And these are larger ones. These are, I think, 1.5 inches to 2 inches. And the thing is it's just going to kind of, see how this right here, it's just going to catch a little bit, so you just will have to be careful. Oops. When you go to turn your pages, you can't really open it kind of full open without kind of tucking your pages behind like that. But it can be done. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that before I go on and finish embellishing. So now I have these extra holes that I've punched that I'm going to have to just live with. The lower one's going to be covered up, but I have this extra one up here, and hopefully I can cover that up with some of my photo mats and my embellishments and stuff. So anyway, I've got just my 1 ring, and that's sufficient. I'm going to tie a great big chunk of ribbon on there, and it still will be really cute, and as you kind of flip through. So I'm going to finish it up now, and I'll be back to show you what it looks like when it's all done. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do the rosette that I'm going to put on the front of my witch's hat. One of the things I also did is I made these great little spiral pieces, and you'll find paper is actually really malleable. So what I did is these are just 1/4 inch strips of paper. I just took a chopstick or a bamboo skewer. You just kind of spiral them down there, and you come up with these really fun kind of curly cues. And I'm going to put these out the top of my hat. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a rosette. So this is a 1.5 by 12 inch strip of paper. I scored it every 1/2 inch and accordion folded it like this with my fingers. I'm going to do a double layer. So I've got this for one side, and then for inside of that, I did a 1 by 12 inch strip. Same thing, scored it every 1/2" and accordion folded it. And then you need a couple circles that you can use as your bases. So this is a 2-inch circle punch out. I like to use a quick drying liquid glue. You can also do this with hot glue if you want to. Regular scrapbook adhesive just doesn't hold well. You need something that's a little bit stronger. Then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to glue my strip together into a circle like this. I might as well go ahead and do the smaller one too while I'm waiting for that to kind of set up just a little bit. And when you do this, you want to make sure you give yourself some time to do it because it takes a little bit to kind of get the hang of it. You might want to try it out with some scraps. So I want my purple side up with this one. I want the stripe side up with the larger one. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my circle and I'm just going to put glue all over it. I'm going to use that as my base, and I'm going to stick my rosette down onto that. So just going to go ahead and get glue all over that. If you're using hot glue, like I said, this goes way faster. Then what you're going to do is you're going to actually take this circle and you're actually going to force the center down like this. That's why you want to make sure that glue is really dry. The larger your strip, the wider it is, the trickier it is. And this one is about as wide as you can do and still be able to go around in a full circle. So then what we're going to do is then we're going to put that right onto that black cardstock punch out that we've got there. And sometimes what I do is I'll just kind of slide it off and flip it over and make sure that I've got that circle on there really good. And I just sit there and I'm just going to hold that with my fingers and then you can kind of even this out. And you can also put a drop of glue down in the center to just kind of hold things all together. We're going to cover that up so it's not going to matter if it's a little bit goopy in the middle there. But all that will just help, and then you just want to sit there, and basically you just have to sit there and hold it until it's all dry. That's why hot glue is kind of nice for this. I've tried Gloobers, which are those great double sticky adhesive circles put out by Cosmo Cricket, and I have a hard time getting them to work for this type of rosette or a flower. They were great for some of the other ones where there's a lot more contact, but unfortunately with this one, there's just not a lot of contact with the backing, and so it gets to be a little bit of a problem. So that's our larger one. I'm going to kind of put it off to the side. It might kind of pop open, so I need to keep an eye on it. And see, it's going to pop up. And then I'm going to go ahead and make my smaller one, and I'm going to layer that right on top. And then I'll be back to show you what it looks like when it's all done. Okay, so this is our book. It's all finished. It's all decorated, lots and lots of glitter. I have glitter everywhere in my house. So I called it the Boo Crew, and I figured I can put pictures in of trick-or-treating or pictures of my friends or whatever I want to do. So I'm just going to flip through it and kind of show you. In your directions, you've got up-close pictures of all of the embellishment. I showed you in the video how to do the rosette, but there's some other up-close pictures of different things. So this is the cover. And then I haven't put any photo mats in this yet, and I intend to before I photograph it for the directions. But I wanted to take some up-close pictures of the way I embellished each hat before I do that. And you can see I reinforced the hole where I've got the ring because I'm afraid it's going to pull out. And then I'm intending to cover up some of my extra holes that I messed up on with my photo mats. So I basically decorated the front, and then the back of the hat I just did a strip of paper on most of them, or sometimes it wraps around. This one right here, I punched out a bunch of 1-inch circles at the bottom, cut them in half, and just layered them on there for a little detail, and put a little piece of trim on there. And then I cut these out of some of my leftover paper scraps. This one right here, it's one of those great wired ribbons where you can pull one end of the ribbon. I used about 2 feet of ribbon, and you just kind of make it into a big rosette. And then with this, because it's got a lot of body to it, I really pushed it down to really get that as flat as I can. And then I just put a felt piece on top of it. And I actually also built this onto a punch-out, a 2-inch circle punch-out, so I would have something to glue down onto my page. So there's that one. This one is just a piece of ribbon with some trim on there, and I just cut out some paper scraps and added some fun embellishments. With this one, I did some fringing. cut a strip of paper, fringed it, added a piece of ribbon. I actually wrapped it around from the other side, tied it on the front, and then I punched out some little bats and just used a piece of wire to and wrapped it around here, and then it just goes up through the bats just to kind of give it a little bit of fun detail right there. And then here's the last one, and on the last one what I did is I actually tied it on the back side, and I used some of this fun, they look like pipe cleaners, but it's fun trim, just kind of wrapped it around the bow. And what I did with the bow is I actually stapled it, tied it once and stapled it, and then I, in order to tack it down, I glued it behind some of the glittery pieces. So here's my Boo Crew book, and then I just tied a couple feet of ribbon on my ring there just to kind of give it some fun. And you'll be getting the instructions in your email. Thanks from Scrapyard Chicks.